Hi everyone, my name is Yukari and I will be making daily process videos for the month of July as I sketch in my Hobonichi Techo for World Watercolor Month. So let's get started. Today is day 15 and the prompt is Effervescent. And so instead of a floral, today I'm going to do a drink. And so I'm doing a kind of a pink drink that you see everywhere, loaded with cherries. And yeah, so let's get started. All right, so here are my supplies for today. I'm using 3 brushes, my number 0, number 2 round, and then my Chinese brush. And the colors that I'm going to be using are Quin Rose. I'm using Pyrrol, not Scarlet, but Crimson. And I said that the same thing yesterday. I also used a Crimson. And Ultramarine Blue, but clearly that's not it. I guess yesterday I had used yellow on top to make that green. And so I'm cleaning my paint a little bit. So here is the Ultramarine Blue. And then I'm also using white, and it's not the watercolor white, but this is a gouache white. And I'm using it to mix with Quin Rose for the pink. All right, here's my sketch of a glass with some cherries in it, and I'm going to paint the background with pink that I made with Quin Rose and the white gouache. And you know these pink drinks are everywhere these days, and it seems like everybody's making fizzy drinks. I had one yesterday at Starbucks. And as we go towards the outside of the page, I'm just adding a little white water to it to lighten that pink. And notice that Tomoe River paper gets really crinkly as it gets wet, and it drives some people crazy, but I kind of like that about the paper. And it does actually straighten as it dries. And I'm adding a little more pink to the inside of the glass, and then darken with more Quin Rose. So I'm going to be using a couple of different ways to do the bubbles on the cherries, and that's, you know, the effervescent part. The first is just making circles with your paint, and we're going to be painting around the circles and leaving that white space inside. And what's nice about watercolor is that when you define an area with your paint, the watercolor doesn't move inside of it. And so if you have a large enough area, this would be a good way to achieve the white around. And even when the paint is wet and I add more pigment, you're not going to have the pigment seep into the white. So this is what I'm doing for the big bubbles. And I'm adding a little ultramarine blue to the crimson to add shadows. And so I'm going to make more circles for the other cherries. But for the cherry on the left, I'm going straight with the paint, and we're going to be using different technique here. The bubbles on the left cherry were really, really tiny on my reference image. And so I really couldn't use the first technique. So I'm going to avoid adding bubbles to the part of the cherry that's on top of the glass. You're not going to see bubbles there. And while that paint is drying, I am adding the stem. This is green gold, and I've mixed a little bit of green gold with crimson for that shadow color. All right, so now that it's dried a bit, the bubbles on the cherries aren't just white circles. They have color inside of it. And some are crescent shaped, some are circle with a color inside. And so I'm adding a little bit of color there. And I have 3 gel white pens, and I am going to start with, this is a Sakura jelly roll in 0.5 nib size. And so I'm adding the small bubbles. And you have to be really careful with these because it will clog up the pen, the paint can. And it's nice to have a small nib size white pen. I do really mainly use the Uniball Signo white, the broad tip, because it's such a crisp white. But for here, it's difficult to do. And so the other way to achieve sort of the white is to scrub your paint. And this is perfect for those edges where you don't have a hard edge. You want a softer, diffused edge. And then going back with my paint. And now notice now I'm using the Signo broad, and it's a much brighter white. And just adding dabs of white. And also adding a little bit of bubbles inside the drink and outside the drink. And you know, I could fuss over these bubbles. And I'm going to be adding a little more shadow with Ultramarine Blue mixed with Quin Rose for the bottom of the glass, where there's that refraction a little bit going on here, and also adding cast shadow. All right, so I'm going to be adding a quote and journaling. All right, so here is my completed work. And I added a quote that says, "Laughter is a bubbly, effervescent form of holiness." And, you know, these pink drinks are so popular these days. I see it everywhere. I had one yesterday at Starbucks. And yeah, and I'm seeing sunshine today, which is wonderful. So yeah, thank you for watching. And then we'll see you tomorrow.